think it's fair to say Fire Emblem Three Houses hasn't exactly gone under the radar. After years and years of discourse about the game and the world of Fódlan that has continued until this very day, it sometimes feels like we know everything there is to know about this game. But recently, I went down a little rabbit hole and discovered a great amount of connections between the growth rates of stats, skill levels and hidden talents of the many characters and the way they are portrayed in the story. There is a ton of interconnected storytelling and profiling going on here, between the gameplay and the world building, to an extent I had never even realized, so let's not waste another second and take a look. We're gonna start with the Black Eagle House, the perfect opportunity to talk about the very specific list of characters that are weaker at faith. Since this proficiency is of course directly tied to your beliefs and also affiliation with the Church of Cerros, it shouldn't come as a surprise that several Black Eagles are not a fan. For Edelgard and Hubert, this is obviously the result of their desire to overthrow Rhea's organization, while for Petra it's more to be taken literally. She is from Bridget after all, where people don't follow the church, meaning she is behind the average Fódlan citizen in that regard and as such can consider faith a weakness. For the same reason, Dudu, Shamir, Claude and Cyril are also all weak in the faith department, with the latter being especially interesting seeing as he is very devoted to Rhea. Then again, that doesn't directly translate, as can also be seen with Catherine, who doesn't have a particular strength in faith. Interestingly enough though, that also applies to Sedith, who is probably the most devout follower of the church in all of Fódlan, making me believe his lack of special talent for the proficiency may just simply be for balancing reasons. Yuritsa is also bad at faith, which is fitting, as is his weakness for authority. Despite him seemingly being an authority figure at both the academy and as one of the higher ranked members of Edelgard's forces, it is well established Yuritsa isn't exactly the most social guy, and even within the Adrestine army, he mostly works alone. That said, Bernadetta doesn't have a weakness for authority, which is honestly kind of odd because being surrounded by a bunch of soldiers like battalions do sounds like her worst nightmare. And while we're on the topic of authority, a little fun fact I noticed is that there's not a single class in the game where proficiency in that skill is required or helpful in passing the necessary tests, save for the ones exclusive to the lords, which is fitting of course, seeing as they're quite literally the most authoritative figures in the entire continent. But alright, back to the Black Eagles, where we find Dorothea having a proficiency for swords, which I always kinda considered a little nod in the direction to make her your dancer, which fits her character of course, but this actually goes a tad deeper than that. In her A support with Felix, she mentions that swordplay was part of her training as a songstress, explaining that it is nowadays considered an important part of the job. That makes her talent for it not only more understandable, it also makes you wonder why her initial level isn't a tad higher than the E+ she starts with. But hey, if fighting capabilities are really considered part of a songstress's toolkit, does that then mean Manuela has them too? Well, yes actually. Manuela also has a talent for swordplay, and for a priest, she has a remarkably high speed and strength stat, suggesting she can hold her own much better than we might think. She even suggests she knows a thing or two about using violence in her support with Flame, echoing Dorothea's words that it is to be considered part of the job. On to the Blue Lions next, where we start with the Lord Dimitri. His kit is almost characterized by his complete lack of any magic ability whatsoever. His growth rates in magic and resistance are poor, and reason is also a weakness of the future King of Fargus. As is explained in Free Hopes, in his only support with Annette, the Bladed family has been terrible at magic for generations, as Dimitri mentions both his father and grandfather were helpless at it. Though he does say he always found magic very interesting and even wanted to become a mage growing up, his complete lack of talent for it made it so it's a fire hazard every time Dimitri tries his hand at it nowadays. Something similar is actually the case for Hubert, who is very much not a Blue Lion, but it parallels Dimitri's story so well I had to mention it here. So Hubert actually dreamt of being a Pegasus Knight, which is obviously difficult since he's a man, but at least he could still be a Wyvern Rider, right? Well, not without its difficulties. Because Hubert is afraid of heights as well, explaining his weakness in flying as a skill and meaning his dream growing up will probably also never become true. But hey, at least he and Dimitri have something to bond over now. But let's get back to some actual Blue Lions now, like Sylvain. It is not exactly mentioned outright in-game I don't think, but it is very strongly implied through both supports and stats that the resident womanizer of Garreg Mach has poor eyesight. He infamously flirted with a scarecrow and Ingrid's grandmother, yet at the same time he barely recognizes Leonie as a woman, The man needs glasses. And to add more fuel to that flame, not only are Sylvain's dexterity and hit rate absolutely terrible, he also has a weakness in archery, which requires very good eyesight. It is a bit of speculation, I admit, but it feels quite likely to be intended. And while we're on the theory train, let's also speculate about Annette a little. She has a weakness or perhaps disinterest in heavy armor, which could be seen as her not wanting to go down the same path her father Gilbert went down. Then again, it might also simply be a nod to how Annette is small and frail, but I don't know. Edelgard can't exactly reach for the top of the shelf either, and she has no problem swinging that axe around. When we look at Felix, we find a quite interesting situation, where reason is a weakness of his, but also his hidden talent. The answer as to why this may be can perhaps be found in his C support with Ingrid, where they talk about Felix's presence or lack thereof in either the tactics class or war council depending on the phase. Apparently, Felix is quite uninterested in Rude in these sessions, but at the same time, his creative ideas prove to be quite good. When we take tactics and strategy to be translated to reason here, it can be seen as Felix having a natural talent for the skill, but also a lack of interest, which would explain his strange affiliation with it. A much clearer reason for skill weaknesses can be found with To Do. As he explains in his B support with Annette, animals don't like him, never have, never will. This is also reflected in the gameplay, as he has weaknesses in both riding and flying, both of which require the cooperation of animals, of course. Interestingly enough though, Happy apparently has trouble getting along with animals as well, according to her own experiences at least, but she actually has strengths in both riding and flying, which kinda contradicts that. Maybe the idea of her being able to summon monsters and animals, which these strengths of course fit, was created before the additional character trait of struggling to get along with animals, who knows. Next we head to the Golden Deer, and I feel like a bit of an apology is in order, because while this ragtag group also definitely has their story gameplay connectivity, it is all a bit less interesting and more obvious than with the other two houses. For example, Hilda has an exceptionally high charm stat, which, sure, is a match made in heaven, but it's also kinda to be expected, right? Same thing with Lysithia. Anyone that knows her backstory knows she is quite frail, physically weak and easily tired, meaning her weaknesses in basically every physical skill like swords, lances, axes and heavy armor make perfect sense. She also has the lowest HP cap of all units in Free Houses, which means she's not only the most likely to die in gameplay, but also, well, you know. While he's not a Golden Deer, I quickly want to mention Balthus here as well, since he too has a very fittingly low growth rate for luck. Gambling away his money is like his whole thing, so this makes perfect sense. It's a little nod that has actually been done more often before, as Arthur from Fates similarly has notorious bad luck in both characterization and stat spread. I'd say the most interesting of the Golden Deer from the perspective of this video is probably Leonie. She has very similar strengths and weaknesses as Gerald, who may not be playable but does have skill levels found within the code. We're talking both lances and riding, but a key difference here is that while Gerald can consider authority a strength, it's actually a weakness of Leonie, which plays into the fact that Gerald is the renowned warrior and leader of his mercenary group, while Leonie is only just starting out and really still a student looking up at her idol. And finally, I want to take a very quick look at Anna, who has skill levels I really can't figure out. We all know Anna, right? Sly, great saleswoman, smooth talker, all descriptions that fit her, I would say. So when I think of a successful businesswoman and what she would be good at, I would think authority and reason, which are both actually Anna's weaknesses. I can get reason since she's not a mage or anything, but authority? Anna is a great talker, can butter up anyone, and seems like the type that can lead as well. So why she would have trouble working with battalions, I have no clue. If you have any idea, share it in the comments, I'll pin the explanation I like best. In fact, share your thoughts and other theories about these hidden little details as well. I'm sure there are even more I haven't unearthed. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.